So our next speaker, and this time we'll be handing over the controls to Andre. But first, I want to read Andre's bio before we hand him over the controls. So Andre and me met, man, it's been years and years ago at a Manufacturing USA event. It was actually for DMDI, which is now MXD, in Atlanta. So it was before MXD, DMDI, UI Labs had their facility in Chicago. And so I remember distinctly me and Andre meeting at dinner one time. And so it was we just kind of, hit it off as technology guys and just enthusiasts in this field. But so Andre is the founder and CEO of Authentise, a leader in data-driven process automation software for additive manufacturing. He's also been the chair of the digital manufacturing at Singularity University in Silicon Valley. So Andre is a frequent speaker on 3D printing in the digital thread and manufacturing events such as Wired, Rapid, Open Innovation, CES, and more. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Andre, and Josh Lang with our AV team is going to pass you the controls. So.
Excellent.
Oh yeah, there you go. You're live now.
Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Joel. Really appreciate you guys inviting me over, and excited to be here. As Joel said, I run Authentise. I'm also the chair for digital manufacturing at Singularity University. And today I really want to talk about additive in the context of manufacturing as a whole, and why I came to it. Because before I started Authentise, I ran a venture capital fund in Nigeria for 5 years, and really an event there in 2012 is what kickstarted me in the journey. And unfortunately it killed 159 people, and one of the primary cause of the crash was that a part broke on the plane, and the airline decided to keep it flying. This is a pretty extreme event in an emerging economy, so you might not feel like it reflects what your own experiences are. But having done a little research on it, we realized that every plane that flew in the States earlier this century had a counterfeit part on board, even Air Force One. So supply chains suck. And now COVID is showing us that in real time, whether it's PPE or ventilators or the lack of flour in our supermarkets, supply chains really do suck. And that's true too for many other aspects of our economy. I'm sure many people on this call are familiar with the NASA news release about 2 years ago that a supplier had been faking test results for aluminium, and as a result, 2 satellites went down. They lost $700 million. The DoD has a $2 billion overspend and a $1 billion underspend, or other way around, for their inventory every year. So that's just the DoD. Imagine what that means for the economy as a whole. We store a lot of stuff just in case we need it. And the same is true. Fashion is maybe the best example of this. Zara is a fast fashion brand, but what makes them different is that they produce 50% of their inventory during the season close to the consumer, and as a result they only sell 10% of their inventory at a discount versus 30%, which is roughly what Gap sells at a discount. So a lot of examples of supply chain just not working for the customer and for industry. And so when I think about the kind of solutions that you might need to address that, it really comes under the banner of, supply chains need more insight. They really just need to know who can produce that, where is my part, what if that supplier fails, where else can I get it made, and really thinking that through, it needs to be a little bit, in terms of the information display, a little bit like Tom Cruise in the Minority Report. It needs to understand really where everything is at any given moment with complete control of that data. Now, you've already heard of from great speakers in terms of solutions in the market and their approaches. In Authentise's own solution, or solution to the specific challenge that we just talked about really starts at home. And what we do is we produce software that manages workflow from quoting through to shipment in a common software interface, and allows you to manage that production workflow. I'll show you a few of the features that we can do, because I don't want to spend too much time advertising a product, but it maybe gives you some context. So firstly, the solution allows you to obviously review parts in 2D or 3D, or to generate quotes and kind of export those in the format that you choose. We integrate directly with CAD systems, so you can review the part in a format or in a tool that you're comfortable with. And then you set up workflows, and you can decide also on work instructions. So that allows you to decide exactly how the product will float, but also what information do you need from the manual operations for the operators at the time of deployment. Then from the review stage onwards, you have the ability to schedule either automatically, which allows us to balance your load across different machines, or manually, depending on your needs. We tie in directly to machines, so we can automate, for example, automatically update the status of your order depending on what we currently see building, but obviously also we integrate that information into your traceability reports. And for the manual steps that you have, we have an app that allows operators to interact with the part, feedback information that is being requested from them, and also use the same app to update the material information, give you a real-time overview of what that material, where that material has come from. As I mentioned, the information is recorded in a traceability report, so you have one point of reference for all the information related to a single part. And then you have the ability to show that information in other ways. One way is to get an analytics dashboard going, as you see here. And the second way is to review that data via external tools. So you might either integrate that into your existing IT infrastructure, your PLM systems, for example, or, and this is really an aspect of digital manufacturing that I hope will grow over time. We have integrations with what's called no-code platforms. One example is Microsoft Flow, and this allows you to set up a workflow that says, if there is, for example, if there is a machine that has less O2, that has an O2 content that exceeds this threshold, then send me a text message. So you can set up your own reporting workflows for your dashboards, your text message alerts, your own tables. So a high degree of customizability through the platform to access the data that you're generating. So the differentiation really boils down to three aspects. One is that throughout that process, we have the opportunity for third-party algorithms to be plugged into the system. So we have about, I'll get back to this, about 18 different partners that we can plug in throughout the workflow. And you can, for example, get better, different mesh healing, other quoting algorithms, and so forth. But then also we plug in that machine data, and we have more integrations for machine data than anybody else. And we use that data in ways that drive return on investment and really make your factory more efficient, because we use it in automated ways. You might also wonder what happens with data when it's being stored. And in reality, that data is now very secure. We've been working for a long time with defense players in making sure that the security of the platform is as high as possible. We're now fully ITAR compatible, for example. But also, if none of that is sufficient for you, we can deploy the entire system on servers that you choose. And we also acknowledge that, of course, we don't work in isolation, and multiple different elements or software elements playing a role in your IT infrastructure. And you'll have an ERP system, PLM system, and so forth, and we have experience integrating with those too. But really, what Authentise excels at is this concept of being at the center of the data that's being produced on your factory floor. And the advantage of using systems like Authentise is that you're creating a digital record of everything that's happened to the part. It really provides context in your manufacturing workflow. And something I haven't really gone into in this presentation, but I really ought to speak more about, is why that's different from so many other digitization initiatives that you may have heard of. And there's a lot of big buzzwords being thrown around, like Industry 4.0, and oftentimes that's associated with a failed digitization attempt. And I think that at the crux of that is that we've forgotten context. The digitization efforts of the past have usually relied upon just going to a machine, trying to get sensor information, and then what? You know, if you just get sensor information from a machine, it's just siloed. You don't know why that data started occurring. Really, the only two applications that you can build on top of data that is just siphoned off machines without any context are either analytics or predictive maintenance. The first is basically a colorful way to entertain managers, and the second, predictive maintenance, is an insurance product, and nobody really likes paying for insurance. So instead, what we've done is focused on trying to get as much information about the context of the part and make that available in as many ways as possible for you to be building on. And that's at the heart of our success to date. We're really lucky to be working with some really cool customers, key customers like Boeing, that tell us that they couldn't have done this, the additive growth that they've had in their business without us. Some of the other customers we talked about, and just like the industry as a whole, we're just getting started. You know, the focus has squarely been on some of the early adopters, classic Clayton Christensen in a way, innovator's dilemma. You grow from the industries that have a certain amount of initial need or desperate need into the higher volume markets, and that's where we are as a company as well at the moment. And what's helping us in that journey is that we are built on this microservices infrastructure. And really sets us apart is that we have built all of the tool that I've just shown you on 30 modules that are usually made available to developers. And even if you have a fairly experienced team and you're developing your own solution, you can utilize these modules to build your to integrate into your own software. So we have customers that we're working with today that, for example, only utilize our connectivity modules, so allowing them to speak directly to the machines. We also have customers that work with us just to figure out what part is valuable to be 3D printed, and they utilize a few modules to do that. What's unique about this is that the technology, these 30 or so modules don't only include Authentise technology, but they also include third-party technology. And you can see the ones that do include third-party components are in italic here. And that's valuable because there's a lot of innovation still to happen in this industry, and allowing you to utilize multiple different modules at any given moment, or multiple different provider algorithms at any different moment, virtually guarantees that you're going to be able to access best-in-class solutions. The traditional approach to providing you with Industry 4.0 software would have been to lock you in. That's what they want to do. They want to make sure that you only buy software from them. Instead, we're taking a completely open approach to the market. We're saying, we know that there's still a lot of room to grow. We know that Authentise isn't going to provide always the best-in-class solution to every aspect of the workflow. So instead, we're saying, let's open up, and if there is a better solution, or even if there's an aspect to the stack that we don't really want to build ourselves, or we can't build ourselves, we're going to work with partners to do that. And here's just some of the partners that we work with in that journey. And that's not stopping. There's more to be done in that market too. So just a quick overview of the product, but I really, what interests me is why. Why is this so important? And the group of software that we are operating in is more commonly known as manufacturing execution system, has been around for a long time. And the question is, why is this so unique, or why is this so important for Additive? And some of the previous speakers alluded to the challenges that Additive has that may be unique. But I think contextually, this comes back to the story I was telling earlier, this need for agility in manufacturing. The supply chains aren't working because we can't get the parts that we want to the customer when we need them. And this need for instant gratification among consumers, or the ability to react to environmental events like COVID, are pushing supply chains to be more agile than ever before. And manufacturing needs to become more agile in that process. And the solutions that we've had to manage our manufacturing environment just can't keep up. So really, they fall into manufacturing execution systems today, fall into two buckets. Either they're glorified Excel sheets, so they are essentially job shops utilize tools that are mostly based on manual updates. There's very little automation in these systems, but they provide a high degree of flexibility, so every part that comes through the system can be unique, and that's great. On the other hand, you have SAP and Siemens and bigger players that provide manufacturing execution systems that are more geared towards high volume production. I call these traffic light systems. So essentially, they're just reporting to you, are we building the right amount of parts, and are we building them at the right speed, and are we building them at the right quality? But any divergence from the norm part that was established is very hard for those systems to cope with. It usually costs quite a lot of money just to change the process. So no customizability, but in at least you get some automation in the process. And so in that context, I think there is absolutely room for a system that can provide that agility, but doesn't lose as much of the economies of scale that the traffic light systems currently provide. And with Additive coming into the fray, we obviously have an environment where there's more data, there's bigger need, and there's also suddenly this injection of innovation. So you're seeing these third-party algorithms really taking more and more value, or providing more and more value into the system. So there's a lot of benefit to be gained from utilizing these manufacturing execution systems. But really, what interests me is that building these solutions is just the first step. So yes, you can gain efficiency in your operations, and you can also gain transparency. But what do you do with this contextual data is really what interests me the most. One example that we're pursuing at the moment is working with some of our clients and their suppliers to rethink the way supply chains work. So instead of being in an environment where you just receive a paper-based report at the end of the production, and it tells you this is what happened to the part and everything seems to be okay, you can have a system that's entirely digital and reports to you at any given moment, where is the part, how much spare capacity is there in the system, what's the traceability information like, and is my data secure? This is a bit like the supply chain orchestration that the automotive industry has, but the automotive industry, known for its just-in-time delivery systems, is not a very resilient system, as we saw when the Fukushima disaster happened. The tsunami hit the east coast of Japan a few years ago, and Toyota lost 4 of its main factories and hundreds of subcontractors, and what ended up producing about 600,000 cars less that year as a direct result of that event. So they're not very resilient, and they're not very agile as a result. So can you provide the same kind of visibility and control that the automotive players have, but with more agility in the system? And we believe that's absolutely possible. And again, we're taking the approach of openness. We're saying, look, we want to control the entire workflow, but within that workflow, there are maybe elements that other people are better at providing or can provide choice to our customers. And the specific element of that is, how do we control the data as it goes directly to the machine? So this encryption element, and you might be surprised to hear that there are actually quite a few vendors in the industry right now that can provide that connection to the machine. And again, there we've provided the customers with the ability to choose between these different providers and integrate directly into the machine. At least started on those integrations in some cases. So that's the kind of the next step for the company, is not only to be able to manage internal operations, but also a completely new paradigm on how you might manage supply chain. And we have many other ideas on how to manage or how to utilize this contextual data that Authentise helps to gather and collect. And it'd be interesting to talk with you, maybe in the Q&A or afterwards, and how you can, how you think contextual data can help your own operations. I have my own ideas, but of course, very interested to hear from you. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Andre. That was great. And so I'll bring up the first. I'll kind of fire off my first question I've been asking all the panelists is, not many people probably know this, Andre, but you posted a picture a while back on social media. I think you have the biggest family in the world. Like, there was like a family, there's like, it must have been like 300 people. This was way before COVID. So if anybody's wondering,
yeah,
it was like,
no social distancing involved.
Yeah, so
at all.
that was just quite cool. Like, you guys were all on like a massive yacht or something. I don't know, boat or something. I don't know. It's cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm very fortunate to know across many generations, family members. But you know what's really, really amazing? And I won't put this person in it. There's somebody else in the additive industry. And I was at dinner with them, and I was saying, you know, I've just organized this holiday for 250 people in Croatia. It's all family members. And she turned around. Oh, she says, that's nothing. I do one every 5 years for 1,000 family members. I was blown away. That's incredible. They even get Bacardi to sponsor it. They're that big. I'm like, that is my next goal. I need to have more family members so I can get the alcohol company to sponsor.
That was awesome. I just saw that. I was like, that's amazing. That's like,
yeah, very
fortunate. So yeah, you're kind of like an international traveler. Like, when I think of people that like travel like crazy, the only person that you probably like travels more is like my co-founder and Simba, but obviously nobody's traveling anymore. So what is like, how has that been for you? Like, what are you doing now? Like, you know, it's like,
I know, right? What am I doing outside of a plane? I don't. I mean, the biggest journey for me was I commuted to San Francisco from London about every 2 weeks to give talks, and you know, obviously there was two things: I can't travel, and we can't put 1,000 people in a hall anymore to have conversations. So, you know, there's absolutely no reason for me to go to San Francisco either. And you know what? I don't miss it. It's been amazing. Just before lockdown in the UK, I was in the UK to do an accelerator program with Boeing and some of the aerospace companies in Europe. And just before the lockdown, I'm like, my family has a summer cottage in the countryside in England. Let's work from there. And so my wife and I moved up here, and I've got to say, as you can see, I'm stuck in the shed now because apparently my voice is too loud. But it's a great, it's been fantastic for me. And really, for a software company, there's not that much difference. We all worked from home prior to lockdown. You know, what's weird for me is that I've hired people, and they started working for Authentise without me ever meeting them. So that's a little strange. But apart from that, there's one guy, I still don't know what he looks like because his camera's broken. And so, like, but that's really the extent of it. It is, there are some guys in the company who do have to travel because we want to work with people on site. But other than that, you know, most of the software team is already remote by nature. So it's okay.
Yeah, no, it's cool to like, yeah, we're able to, with this technology, we're able to, somehow still like, still operate. So it's like, it's cool
Right.
that we have those opportunities. So, uh, yeah, I mean, do you think here's a question, would you think there'll be an increase in hire, once COVID is over, as far as, in this space, or what are your thoughts? What do you see? What are you thinking about that? Or do you think like there's different positions opening up because of COVID? So there's like, yeah, what do you see?
I mean, ultimately, of course, we've seen that the supply chains are under immense stress, and that the concept of distributed manufacturing, which motivated me to join the industry so many years ago, um, is something that has to happen. But incumbents are very slow.
Yeah,
Incumbent processes are even slower. And so to move from where we are today to where we ought to be is not just a question of flicking a switch. And so I think medium to long term, this is a really big boost, the scenario that we find ourselves in, to what we do, not only for additive, but also growing outside of additive. And I didn't really emphasize this enough in the talk that I just gave, but really additive, because of its lack of legacy, so to speak, and no data, and kind of increased need for agility. It's a great sandbox, but the solutions that we're developing here, or the innovation that's happening in additive, can easily apply to other process steps as well. So that's something that we've kind of that we are seeing may be a boost to the industry. But in the short term, obviously, major industries like aerospace that have been a driver for additive for quite a long time now are severely impacted, and I don't think that you're going to see that recover as quickly as we might like. So,
sure.
some short-term bad news, but longer-term good news for our industry.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, no, great answer. So there's a couple more questions, and and then anybody that, if we don't answer your question during this time, we'll be posting these and we'll be getting the answers to you. But one question was, what kind of sensor technology do you guys work with?
So it's interesting. Right now, most of the sensors that are being provided in the additives, or most of the data we receive from the additive process step, not from the others process steps, are actually integrated into the machine. So there might be O2 levels, but they're also visual sensors like cameras. We don't yet process melt pool monitoring data. That needs to be done at the edge because there's just too much of it. But there are also environmental sensors that might play a role. So, for example, the humidity in the operating theater, the storage location, vibrations that might happen on the shop floor. So we have the opportunity to integrate those, but frankly, none of our customers have really driven us in that direction yet. What they have driven us into is, what data can we receive from non-additive process steps? So think about CT scans, right? Lots of data being generated there. There are obvious automation opportunities, comparing the as expected to the melt pool monitoring data or image sensors within the machine to the final end result. So from the CT scan, maybe we can, for example, detect an area that didn't print very well, or likely didn't print very well, and set up the parameters for the CT scanner and tell the operator, go scan this section of the part for NDE, right? So there are opportunities for us to integrate the workflow, but I've got to say, like, we don't just integrate sensor data because we feel like it. It really has to, there really has to be a use case, and so far, we've just picked up what the machine generates, and that's been sufficient for most of our customers at the moment.
Cool. No, that's great. Well, hey, Andre, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate the opportunity, Joel. Really great event.
Yeah, good to see you, even though it's virtually. So eventually, once this lockdown happens, we'll
geek out
be back
again.
together again. So
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Yeah. Thanks.